Hello guys, how you doing? My name is Joseph Stewart and I am the lead applicator and technical instructor here at Permagard. I'm going to be explaining on how to apply the reactive polymer, and with this segment, this is our AV308, and for this segment this is going to be for new paint on smaller aircraft. So the tool that I'm going to be using is this Rupes, the Bigfoot. This is good for smaller aircraft. For larger aircraft, we would use something a little bigger, like a 10-inch buffer. But for this particular case, we're going to be using this pad right here. So I'm going to be doing an application, and the first thing I'm going to do is prep the surface. This is with our multi-purpose cleaner, reference 312. So I'm just going to spray it down here and wipe it with my microfiber. All right. So now that I've got my surface prepped and we're ready to do our application, I'm just going to shake the product up very vigorously, make sure it's all worked in. It's going to give 2 outer circles. All right. And I'm not going to dab it on. I'm just going to start down and then work it in 1 inch away. So I just worked it in up and down, left to right motion, worked in the product. All right, and typically we'd work in 2 sections, 2 20 by 20 sections. Once you work in your 2 sections, then you're going to go with your dry buff. So I'm going to remove this pad, get a clean one. Okay, and this is going to be my first dry buff. Okay, so as you can see, very easy to apply. That's one of the benefits of Permagard, is the ease of application. And so we've done our dry buff. Now before we move on to our next section of our aircraft, we're going to do one more dry buff, which will be done with the blue microfiber. For this particular case, it would be done with your Ryobi, a 10-inch buffer. I'm going to put one pad on. When I'm working with the Ryobi, you want to have 2 bonnets on at all times. So I'm going to put one bonnet on. And I'm going to put my microfiber on top of it. And basically you want to do this to make sure that, you know, when you're going through each product and your pad gets saturated, that it doesn't seep through to your pad and then cause, you know, cross product interlocking. So after we've done our dry buff, this is our inspection buff, and this is pretty much the last step of the application process for new paint. Okay. And that was the application process for our new paint. So basically we prepped our surface with our 312. We did an application of our reactive polymer, AV308, dry buff, and then went over it with the inspection buff. Okay, so we just did our application on our panel for our new paint with our reactive polymer AV308. One of the benefits of Permagard is that any machine that you use, or any bonnet, this can all be applied with hand, and it's basically just working the product in. And I'm going to explain and just kind of demonstrate in this aircraft piece here that when you can't get to areas with the machine, you fold your bonnet up a certain way. You can just get those details by hand. You just have to work it in. Okay, so we work those areas in where you particularly can't get to with the machine. For areas where the machine is also hard to get to, you just have to work those in first. So do your hand details first. And then we're gonna do an application with the Ryobi to kind of show you how this works in and connects all together. So I already have a bonnet on. I'm gonna leave this one on, and I'm gonna be interchanging this top bonnet. So I'm gonna put this on. Two outer circles. And I'm going to work this in. And as you can see here, the machine can't quite get here. So that's why I worked that area in by hand first, and now I'm kind of blending it in all together. Alright, now that I've worked that area in, I'm going to do my dry buff. So I'm going to remove this top bonnet and add a clean one. This is my dry buff. So as you can see, once again, I can't quite get in there with the machine, so I'm going to take my bonnet off my pad, just dry buff that area with hand. Alright, so now that I did my dry buff, before I would move on, the last thing I want to do is my inspection buff. And this is basically, this can be done by hand, or you could put the a microfiber, on your machine to work it in that way. And this is just to make sure that you don't have any spots of residue that you can't possibly see. Sometimes it's low lighting in hangars. So this is just my last little section here to wipe this down, just to make sure I don't have to come back to this later. Especially when you're up on high areas like the horizontal stabilizer that you can't exactly get up to quickly. So this is a very important step. And that is a full complete application of the new paint section of our process. And as you can see, it's very easy to apply, and that's one of the key benefits about Permagard. Hey guys, welcome back. So Joseph Stewart here again. I'm going to be doing an application on this panel to show what it's like to apply Permagard to used paint, which is generally what most aircraft are. So that's any aircraft that had at least 2 flights out that could be considered used paint. So for this instance, we're going to be using one of our pre-treatments. We have 2 here. So we have our AV303, which is our treatment for very damaged surfaces. This is typically for aircraft that are 6-month-old paint and above. Okay, most of the time this is what you'll use. For aircraft that have little to no scratches, little to no flight time, really great condition, is going to be using our AV302. And this is our treatment for slightly damaged surfaces. And for this particular demonstration, this is what I'm going to be using today, followed up by an application of our reactive polymer, AV308. And this is for such a small surface area when you're working on smaller aircraft. I'm going to be using the Rupes, smaller machine, easier to get into those areas. However, something to note, any of the products can be applied by hand, just kind of putting it on your bonnet and wiping it on. The machine is to mimic hand motion. Okay, so a Permagard can be applied to any painted surface by hand, just by working it in. So I'm going to shake up my product, safety first. Give 1 outer circle here. Normally I would give 2, but we're just going to work it in. Okay, so we just did an application of our AV302, our pre-treatment. Now I'm going to be moving on to take this off and doing our dry buff. Take this pad off here, get a clean one. I'm just going to be removing the AV302. Alright, so now that I've removed my pre-treatment, I'm going to be moving on to applying our reactive polymer. And this, with our pre-treatment and reactive polymer, this is what we refer to as our initial application. Alright, so I'm just going to shake it up, give an outer circle here. Just 1 for this particular small panel. I'm going to work it in. Alright, now that the reactive polymer is good and worked in, I'm going to go ahead and do my dry buff here and remove this. Okay, so now that we've done our dry buff, of course our last step in the initial application process is going to be our inspection buff. So normally I would just take this and put this on my Ryobi, but this can actually be done by hand. So you can just kind of wipe your section with your microfiber just to make sure there's no leftover residue. And that was your initial application process on used paint. Okay, welcome back. So in this particular segment, I'm going to be explaining the application process on old paint. And this is for paint that has a lot of scratches, it's dull, there's no shine, and is heavily oxidized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this here, and as you see here, this is highly oxidized, no shine, and basically we're going to bring these gloss back and then show the process of applying Permagard and just how easy it is. All right, just going to cover this up here. So also, once again, just prep your surface with our multi-purpose cleaner just to make sure there's no dust. So with our old paint segment, the first products I'm going to be using for this particular segment are our abrasives. Okay, we have our 1500 2000, the very heavy grit. A smoother grit, it's going to be the 3000 4000. Okay, and for this particular application, I'm going to be using our sample size bottles. These are what go out in our training kits. And for this application, I'm going to be using the Milwaukee high-speed polisher, okay, with a foam pad for these particular panels. Now on aircraft, if you're going to be doing compounding, we would use a wool pad, but for this particular segment, we're using a foam pad. So I'm going to start off with an application of the 1500 2000. I'm going to put it on my rag here and just wipe it on. You want to use proper PPE because dust could fly up. You don't want the stuff to get in your eyes. So I'm going to be putting on my safety goggles. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wipe this on like so. I'm going to go over it one pass. I'm going to sit this in the back so things don't fall off here. I'll be working in between 1200 and 1600 RPMs. Alright, let's go and wipe this down with our microfiber. Went over it one pass with our 1500 2000. Kind of already see the gloss come back a little. So I'm going to go over it another pass with our 3000 4000. Wipe my surface down. I'm going to go over it one more pass with my 3000, 4000. Alright, we just went over with our last pass of the 3000, 4000, so I'm just going to wipe this down. And I'm going to put this machine to the side now. And I'm going to go back to my Bigfoot. And I'm going to be doing an application of a pre-treatment starting off. This particular segment, you know, this is old paint. So we just remove the oxidation from our surface, and now we're going to be going on to the initial application of the Permagard process, which is also a reminder, very easy to do. Basically just working it in. From this point on, all these products can be used by hand, but we're going to be using this machine. So for old paint, after doing a restoration, the pre-treatment that we're going to use is the AV303. Okay, this is a treatment for very damaged surfaces. This is also a cleaning agent and a very light polish to help really give you, prep the surface to give your best possible results with our reactive polymer. So I'm going to go ahead and shake this up. Do an outer circle here. Work it in. Good and worked in. So I'm going to go ahead and take this pad off and do my dry buff. So I just did a dry buff of my pre-treatment. Now I'm going to do the application of the reactive polymer. A little bit goes a long way, so I'm just going to use one circle for this particular demonstration. Work that in up and down, left to right motion. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove my reactive polymer. my dry buff clean pad. Okay, and then coming to the last step of the process is our inspection buff, which can be done with a microfiber. You can put it on a machine, if you have a bonnet, or you can just do it by hand. Okay, so that was the application of old paint. So we on a dull surface, very oxidized, we brought the gloss back. We went over it with our pre-treatment, our AV303, and then followed with our reactive polymer, which is now it's gonna seal in that protected paint, and the surface will never oxidize again. So just to kind of show you the difference that Permagard can make. It's a completely oxidized surface, very dull. And you can see the gloss and the shine has been brought back. Very easy to apply. So any old paint that you have that needs to be rejuvenated, Permagard's the product.